I don't often do videos that focus on a single model, but as a historic racing fan, I found this model to be so ridiculously cool that I really had to give it a full spotlight of a dedicated video. So, what is this? This is a Fiat 642 Ferrari team transport vehicle from Stance Hunters. So, Stance Hunters is a Chinese brand. There's not a whole lot on this box. As far as I know, this is not a licensed model, but it is like I said, it's a ridiculously cool model. So let's get it out of the box and take a look at it. So this comes screwed in. I've already loosened the screws, so we can just pick this up and pull it out. And it comes with a couple little baggies here on the top that we'll take a look at in a second. But first, let's give this thing a quick spin around and just look at this. So, like they said here, this is not a Ferrari, a Fiat 642. The actual name of this is a Fiat 642 RN2 Bartoletti, and this is a 1957 Fiat 642. And what this means is Fiat built the truck, and Bartoletti turned it into the race transporter. And so it was a collaborative effort. And Ferrari used this vehicle from 1957 until 1963. And they had two very similar vehicles, one based on the Fiat 642, like this one, and then one based on the Fiat 682, which is a very similar vehicle, but it has a different front end on it, as the most obvious distinction between the two. So this one has a rectangular grille, whereas the Fiat 682 version has kind of a oval grille with a crossbar in the middle of it. If you go and look at pictures of these vehicles, you'll see both of these, or the distinction between the two versions of the vehicle. But so as a die-cast model, let's give this the your typical once over. So this is a metal body. It has a plastic base. It does have rubber tires. It does roll. You get dually wheels in the back. It has a rubber spare tire, detailed exhaust. It has articulating front wheels. It doesn't turn the steering wheel, but they do move, which is a pretty cool feature. You have lensed headlights. You have lensed indicators on both the front and on the rear. You have an opening lift gate, and then these tracks where the cars sit are aluminum, and they are textured. So this is like diamond plate here, which is pretty cool. And then this is plastic, this part along here. But the rest of it is metal, and it's an overall very, very nice quality. So if we look on the front, you have the Fiat badge on one side, Bartoletti here on the other side. That's what that should say, at least. Get that to focus. Yeah. Your Ferrari logos. You also have a lensed detail in the bumper area. And back this out. So, these vehicles, obviously, these were the team transport of the time. So they carried probably 5, maybe 6 crew members in the front. And then in this section, it was like workshop, spare parts area that was accessed via doors on this side. So while this particular model is 1/64 scale, this vehicle has been done in other scales, and there is a really nice 1/18 scale version, which looks super cool, which has opening doors for this area and opening doors for the front and what have you. That looks pretty awesome. I've also seen a 1/43 scale version and I believe a 1/87 scale version from Schuko. And those two versions leave a lot to be desired in their accuracy and detail, whereas this one does not. This is, minus the opening parts, it is a very, very well done model. And so, along with with the vehicle, you get two little baggies. One contains mirrors. They give you two sets of mirrors, and the mirrors, there's two little holes on the A pillar where the mirrors would be inserted. One is they give you a round mirror, and they give you a kind of a squarish mirror. To be historically accurate, this is the mirror that you would want to use. This more squarish version. The Fiat 682 version that Ferrari has used the round mirrors, and the 642 had square mirrors. The other thing that they give you are these ramps, and these obviously are to load the car, and then you get another little plastic piece, which we'll talk about in a minute. So if we can get this to focus. So obviously we have our opening part, and then you can set the ramps. There's no detent or anything to hold these in place, so they just kind of sit here, and it'd be most useful if you had a car that, say, doesn't roll. Then you could set up like a diorama scene and set it on there. So I've got this Ferrari 250 GTO, which is a resin model and does not roll at all, so he can sit there perfectly happily. But this is probably not what these things would have actually carried. And in fact, what they did actually carry was this, one of the vehicles that they carried at the time. So this is the Sharknose Ferrari Formula One car. This was the official name of this is the Dino 156 F1. It's the 1961 Formula One car. And it's called the Sharknose because of this very distinctive nose design. And so this is a Kyosho model. But if you go and look at pictures, you'll find that this car was actually carried by this particular vehicle, which is pretty cool. And so these carried their Formula One cars of the era. They carried the cars that they took to races, GT cars, to races like the Targa Florio, and it also carried the 250 LM, which was the car that they raced at Le Mans. And you can find pictures of both the 642 and the 682 versions of the truck with the Ferrari 250 LM at Le Mans, which is pretty cool. So if we look at the truck, like how the truck was used, or how you actually got the cars up here. So there was a mechanism here and here where they could pull a pin, which they did replicate the pins, but you cannot pull those out. And those are very, very soft metal. So if you get one of these, don't mess with those because those will easily break off. But you could pull the pins, and then there was, then you could lower these ramps down at an angle and then hook your other ramps onto them so that you could then roll the vehicles up onto the top level and then raise it back up and lock it in place with this mechanism here. You could maybe pull this apart and try to bend these things down because there is a line here that shows where they are cut, where they could in theory bend, but I would not recommend doing that. And then they have the same thing here at the end where these are kind of bendy, where there's been a cutout on the bottom piece, and they are kind of intended to bend here, but again, I wouldn't bend them too much. And then this last piece that came with, what this is intended to do is it's intended to sit in these slots, and serve as the bar that holds the cars on the top and keeps them from rolling off. However, in order for that to be positioned there securely, these ramps are actually supposed to be a little bit longer. So what you would do is push the ramps down and then slot this in on top of it, and then the tension from the ramps pushing back up would hold this in place and keep the cars from rolling off. This one, these ramps are a little bit too short, and you can't actually put this in. So this is a little bit of a flaw. You can set it there, but as soon as a car hits it, it's just going to fall out. So that's a little bit of a flaw on this, but it's a very minor thing to me. And then also with the ramps, they have little slots here on each side where these can be slid in. It's a little bit finicky, and you do have to be careful with it. But they slide in and sit there on the side, which is very cool as well. You got to be careful. And again, because these are aluminum, they do have a textured surface on them. You don't want to be rubbing that up against the paint, because that's going to sand that paint right off. But it is it still looks really cool. And you know, you can take your Ferrari Formula One car, tuck that up in there, and you know, get some other almost period correct Formula One cars. So this is the 1956 D50, and then this one's a little bit later, but this is the 1961, or sorry, 64 158 F1. And so I have to position him a little bit crooked in there so that he doesn't just slide off. But anyway, there's your full complement of Formula One cars on the vehicle. And so these, I don't remember if I said this. Hopefully I didn't. These were used by Ferrari from 1957 to 1963, and then this one was sold to an Italian company that used it as just a car transporter around Italy for a while, and it ended up in a warehouse and sat and rotted in a warehouse or a barn or whatever it was until 1988, and then it was located by an American collector who actually purchased the vehicle and fully restored it to its original livery and everything. And so, as far as I know, this vehicle actually still exists and still has this Ferrari livery on it, which is really cool. But as a model, and as a fan of historic racing, this thing is just absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful piece of history. It's a beautiful model, and Stance Hunters did a fantastic job on it. And it also looks like Ferrari had one of these, and it looks like Maserati also had one of these. And Stance Hunters is going to be bringing out the Maserati version of this vehicle as well, which is pretty cool. So if you're interested in these, I got it off of eBay. Cost about $65. Had to be shipped from China, and but for the price, totally worth it. One of the coolest die-cast vehicles I've ever seen, and something I'm incredibly happy to have in my collection. Thank you for watching.